Hi, this is the Toronto Gamers board game review. I'm Justin, and today I'll be reviewing Game of Blame. In Game of Blame, you play as an advisor to the Queen, and everything is going wrong. All you can do is try and shift the blame to others and avoid the Queen's wrath. Game of Blame is a card game for 2 to 4 players that originated as a Kickstarter and is published by Warm Acre Games. As usual, we won't be going through the rules in this review, but you can find them in the link below. There's not much to evaluate for components when it comes to card games. There really isn't any artwork in Game of Blame aside from the box. The cards stick to a basic title identifying what issue has happened, such as defective love potions or tax the fairies, colored seals indicating which advisor is to blame for the issue, and flavor text. That said, the color, style, and font choices for the cards work well with the theme, and the simplicity makes it easy to identify where the blame for each issue lays. The cards are basic and fine enough in quality. Sadly, the Kickstarter just barely missed upgrading to linen finish cards, which would have been a nice addition. My quibbles with the components are fairly minor. My biggest is that the box isn't large enough to accommodate all the cards, given that there was an expansion that came with the Kickstarter. So I already tore mine, learning that the hard way. And I do wish the flavor text wasn't quite so light a color, as it wasn't until a few minutes into my first play that I noticed this was actual flavor text on the cards and not just lorem ipsum, and that the text itself is fairly fun to read, reinforcing the light, humorous tone of the game. Unlike other games that are set in a royal court, Game of Blame isn't so much about intrigue and secret strategic backstabbing or even trying to mitigate catastrophes. Basically, everything's going wrong, you can't do anything about it, someone's going down for it, and you better make sure that person isn't you. All of the theme for the game really sits with the flavor text on the cards, and that text delivers. Unfortunately, because there's no real artwork and the gameplay often involves placing more than one card at one time, you find yourself skipping over the lengthy flavor text in favor of just reading the issue title itself, and therefore skipping over a big part of what gives Game of Blame any personality. In Game of Blame, you start off with a hand of issue cards and a roll with a special ability. The point is to lay enough issue cards in the discard or blame pile that you can accuse another player at a time when there are more issue cards in the blame pile with their seal on it than yours. See, when you accuse someone, whichever of the two of you has more issue cards in the blame pile with their seal on it then takes those cards into their hand. You keep playing until the draw pile runs out, and whichever player with the least amount of blame cards in their hand that relate to their role wins the game. What works well in Game of Blame is that because you want to discard cards from your hand, the number of cards you discard corresponds to a specific action you have to take. And you can only discard cards that have a seal that matches one of the seals on the top card of the blame pile, so you're limited in how much you can control what you do. Discard nothing, you draw 3 cards. 1 card, you draw 1. 2 cards, you switch roles, and discard 3 cards, you accuse another player. And yes, I did say switch roles. When you discard 2 cards, the seal on the top card means you have to switch those 2 roll cards. This means you can't just focus solely on filling the blame pile with your enemy's issues because they could easily switch your roles, so all those issues become yours, and now you're the one in danger. This little mechanic actually helps spice the game up a lot, and keeps what could be a straightforward card counting game into something a little more interesting. As well, each role has certain powers, and they can influence the gameplay, though sometimes a bit too much. For example, the Wizard's ability allows you to exchange hands with another player, so that can actually be a bit overpowered near the end of the game when you have little to no time for recourse as the draw pile gets down to 0. Game of Blame is a nice little filler game based on a single mechanic with just enough twist to keep things interesting. Though be aware it can easily play a little longer than its stated 20 to 30 minute playing time. One of the nice things is that you get a different feel when you play two players versus more, as the two-player game is really a focused back and forth between two opponents with some big potential swings, and the added players of a three or four-player game mean you have to think a little broader when it comes to who you blame and when. Because it's fairly straightforward gameplay, the lack of artwork means it can become a bit of a bland game of just playing cards on a pile, so I encourage at least reading the flavor text on your own cards to keep the theme and humor present. Overall, Game of Blame is a fun little filler game with a spark of personality, and even if it can be a bit swingy, so long as it keeps within its 20 to 30 minute time frame, you should still have a great time with it.